Hi everybody, and welcome to today's session with Fortuna Admissions and London Business School. My name's Emma Bond, and I'm joined today by David Simpson, who is Admissions Director for the full-time MBA program and also the Masters in Finance programs at London Business School. David, welcome.
Hi Emma, thanks very much. Great to see you.
Great to see you too. Okay, so David and I worked together for many years at London Business School on the LBS Admissions Committee before I then left and moved on to BCG for a few years and subsequently to my role here at Fortuna Admissions. David has been working at London Business School for now over 20 years, so he has an extraordinary depth of insight into the LBS admissions process. And I would have to say what I would call an encyclopedic knowledge across the general program portfolio and the school itself. So the plan today is that we have a pretty open conversation about LBS admissions to try and help you figure out whether LBS is the right fit for you. And if you've decided to apply, David's going to be giving you some great tips and some insight for really making your application stand out. Okay, so here's what we hope to get through today. Initially, we are going to look at, why you should choose London Business School, what makes it stand out from the other schools out there. Then I'm going to be asking David what he feels are the key criteria that the LBS Admissions Committee look for, when you submit your application. So those are the kind of things that the Admissions Committee will sort of look to see really make you stand out when they are reading through those thousands of applications every year. After that, we're going to move on to the pitfalls, so the what not to do's. These are the kind of typical mistakes that people make when they're putting together an application. And following on from that, we're going to have a short discussion about recommenders. So choosing the right recommenders and making sure that they really put in the effort to support your application is a really critical part of the application. And I know, David, you'll have some interesting things to say about that. After that, we're going to move on to the interview process. So what not to do, what to do. Take a look at the video interview, I think, specifically, which is now a part of the LBS interview process as it is at so many other business schools. And David, I know that'll be interesting because it's certainly something that some of my clients really struggle with. They come to it and it makes them pretty nervous. They find it quite nerve-wracking. So I think it'd be interesting to get your point of view on how that pans out. After that, we're going to look at what's new at LBS, and we're also going to address COVID, so the coronavirus issue, head on and sort of ask what the MBA and the start of the program is going to look like from August onwards this year. Through all of this, everybody, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have, and we'll try and make sure that we have time to get around to answering some of those at the end of the webinar. Okay, so, right. So, David, just to kick us off, what are your thoughts on sort of why a candidate should be considering LBS at this part in their MBA journey? What is it that you really think the school has to offer for people?
Sure, thanks very much for the opportunity, Emma. I think this is a huge decision where to apply, and you need to think carefully and not just slip into it or go with others' advice. You need to do your research, seek views from different people and different influencers, and then decide exactly what's right for you. But I mean, what the factors I think are so important and so amazing about LBS are location, and much of it is down to being in London. Having that global capital city experience, the diversity of employers and sectors that are in London. Everybody's here on our doorstep. Visiting CEO speakers, we've got capital, entrepreneurship, government, the arts. Everything is in the city, and we make sure we use it. So London comes into the school, we go into London. The global community of London Business School, students from all over the world, alumni are based in over 100 countries, faculty are from all over as well. Everything about the school and our programs is global. LBS is even more international than the amazing city that we're based in. Then I think a third factor I'd highlight is flexibility of the program. So that's from the program length on the MBA, 15 to 21 months, that you decide during the MBA. And on the Masters in Finance program has an optional 4th term so that you can take a summer internship if you want, especially if you're looking to switch career. all of our programs build in flexibility in one way or another, because that's basically what our candidates have asked for over time. And then the next factor I talk about is experiential. You know, you have to be practicing what you're learning out there. So London gives us great advantage. So we have something called London CAP, when you can go into the city and work with some interesting organisations on projects. Then the global business experiences, getting around the world to some amazing places and having a life-changing week or so. Through to internships, you know, a big part of MBA is to, again, practice what you've been learning, or if you're looking to make a career switch, take the opportunities to try it out. And firms are coming to recruit our students for both interns and in final employment. And then things like exchange and entrepreneurship summer school. There's a raft of different experiences to make sure you sample and learn and explore throughout that 15 to 21 months experiences. The final thing I'd say is about the school itself. So at the school we have programs for every career stage, really, right from early career, pre-experience master's programs, through to the MBA and the Masters in Finance, which are designed for people with sort of 3 to 10 years, right through to leadership programs for people who are working up to kind of board level. And then, of course, the executive education arm of the school. So I think it's really important that we're catering for lots of different groups. That means we can focus in on quite specific areas for each and every program.
Okay, brilliant. And you talked then about the kind of the experiential side of things. And I know the peer-to-peer learning is something that candidates and clients who come to us are really interested in. So can you tell me a little bit about the study groups and how they work at LBS?
Sure. So having an interest in each other is really important. I'll talk about that later as we talk about what we're looking for. But the study groups are vital. You're going to work with, on the MBA, the first part of your program, work very closely with people from very different backgrounds. We will engineer those groups to be quite different. So if you're an investment banker from New York, then you'll be probably one of only 1 or 2 people with a finance background, the only person perhaps with US experience, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll mix it up. So there's a range of experiences that gives you advantages, learning from others and their expertise. It also can make it quite tough. So it does challenge you, because right now you're working with people who probably are quite similar in many ways. You're in the same sector or the same role, with the same goal. Now, on the MBA, of course, everybody's there for learning, for employment, and for sort of long-term gains. But each and every person has a slightly different perspective and different set of outcomes they're looking for, and that can affect how those groups work. So it's fascinating to watch. You have to make it work yourself, and we will help you along. A lot of the opening content of the MBA talks about working with others, how to get the best out of them, and how to understand yourself. I think self-awareness is vital for an MBA. It is a voyage of discovery, and you'll see a lot of that come through when you're working with others.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And so when somebody has made the decision to apply and they've spent, hours, or they're spending hours putting the application together, what are the key criteria that you're looking for in a successful candidate?
Okay, so we take a very holistic approach. I know most business schools will say that, but we really do. The most important thing you can do as a candidate is to be authentic. We want to learn about you. So we want to hear your story, make it as honest as possible. We're really interested in the personal fit. We only have a certain number of places and stacks of applicants. So we want the people who will best suit us. And that includes a range of different people and personality types. But we are looking for people who are curious and have inquiring minds and interested in others, as I mentioned before. So more than just a collaborative approach, you've got to be fascinated in others' views and perspectives, especially if they're different to your own. So yes, of course, you'll want to put across your points of view. But you've got to be a great listener as well. And you've got to adapt your thinking and open your mind to that. And of course, you need to be driven. You need to have ambition, but it needs to be a realistic ambition. You need to know, so if you have a certain career goal, you need to know a bit about that career sector. You need to know what it takes to get there. Is that even possible with my past experience? Because whilst we can help you a lot with your learning and your career readiness, at the end of the day, it's you who's got to make that change or advance your career. So this is all about you. And of course, we're looking at things like, your academic background, your test scores, references and things like that. But we're quickly cutting through that and then looking more deeply at you as an individual, what you can offer to us, and then hopefully what we can offer to you and whether there's a good fit there.
Sure. Okay, and so just to pick up on something you mentioned there about academics, because one of the things that some people that come to Fortuna are concerned about particularly is GPA. So they may have done their undergraduate degree and perhaps they haven't performed as well there as they might wish. And by the time they are thinking about business school, that's a real concern to them that, you know, they want to apply to a top tier school. They might have a raft of great professional experience, you know, already, but they're concerned that they're going to be cut off at the knees at the gate before they, you know, get anywhere because their GPA is going to let them down. So what would you say to those people?
So it's back to this, what I mentioned about a holistic view. Of course, GPA is important and your academic track record is important, but we consider it amongst the whole. Every year there's one student who joins us who doesn't have an undergraduate degree. We have to be pretty sure they're going to cope with the academics. So we are, I think, pretty open in terms of, even though we're an elite organisation and expecting the best and looking for the most interesting and talented candidates, that talent comes in different ways. So if you have a lower than average GPA, it could possibly go against you, but it depends on everything else. We don't review applications with a negative approach to it. We're trying to look for the positives. So we'll say, hey, okay, this GPA looks a little low. Where was it taken? What institution? Is there a story there? So we give you the opportunity to tell us why perhaps your GPA was a little lower than you would like it to be. We'll read that story. We're human beings. We also know that this was happening to you quite a while ago. So people go through different things in their lives and have different reasons for things. Your GMAT or GRE can help overcome a lower GPA. So that's something to consider, as can the kind of work you've done, who you work for, the fact that they recruited you. Are you doing quantitative work? Do we have worries on certain elements from your GPA? So we're asking ourselves questions and looking for evidence within your application rather than saying, okay, that one's a lot too low, chuck them out. It makes it a lot slower, a lot harder for us. You've been involved with us in the past in great detail, so you've seen how we do it. And I think it's a very fair and open approach. But, you know, there will be people who are rejected. And one of the reasons may be that we think they may struggle academically or their GPA is not competitive. But I like to think we're pretty open-minded and look at the picture as a whole.
Okay, great. And so one of the questions, what are the things that candidates just shouldn't do? So, you know, the mistakes that you see on a regular basis for people who are applying to LBS then.
Okay, the most important point to remember is to do your research. You know, wherever you're applying, whether it's London Business School or the rest of your schools, don't just do desk research, talk to people. You know, this is a big moment in your life. If you're serious about the schools you're applying to, you'll talk to as many people as you can. So that affects the time you're doing your research in. You know, give yourself the time. So if you're looking at an August, September 2021 entry, you should be doing your work now on the different schools to discover as much as you can. We will partly judge you by how much research you've done as well. We need you to show us what you've done. Most of it, though, we'll tell just by from what you're writing. And back to this thing of desk research, we don't just want you to list things you read on our website. They need to apply to you. Why are they interesting to you? Remember, every element of an application counts. So that's whether it's the essays, references, academics, or even the small sections within the application form. Attention to detail is important. You know, this is yours to lose rather than, you know, we'll also say we're not looking for things and errors. You know, it's kind of annoying if you see another school's name in the essay that's supposed to be for London Business School. It's kind of a killer, but not always. You know, we're looking at everything. Again, back to this thing, everybody's human, but we're likely to ask questions on this stuff. So what else? You've really got to explain your experience as well. I think it can be a failing if you talk about your job. Remember, we might not understand the sector. We're not going to be experts, so don't make it too technical. It's quite tough, actually, to translate what you do for a living every day to somebody who doesn't understand all the technicalities. So spend some time doing that. most importantly, be yourself. Don't overthink it. Don't write what you think we want to hear. Okay, so because we're a business school based in the UK, don't tell us that you're the #1 soccer fan in the world if you're not. If you are, tell us, that's fine. But you're not going to win extra points just by telling me your favourite football team. I don't really care about football, so, you know, sorry.
All right, and one of the things that I enjoy about the LBS application form actually is how thorough it is. You obviously have a couple of substantial essay questions, but then throughout the rest of the application there are a bunch of what we call short answer questions. And I think one of the things that people don't realise sometimes is how important those short answer questions can be, that ask about your extracurricular activities, that ask about your international experience, and all of those, I think, I'd be right in saying they feed into that holistic perspective that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years ago we looked at this, and the trend within business schools was to cut essays, and so we jumped on board with that. And I'm a big believer in only asking questions that you're really interested in the answers. So personally, we don't run with creative essays when you tell us who you want to have dinner with, etc. I want to hear your story about why you're looking at business school, why London Business School, and why now. It's very practical. It's quite traditional, but I'm not going to apologise for that, because we are, as you say, asking lots of smaller questions throughout the application. But again, they're really practical. We don't ask a question unless we're really interested in the answer. And quite often we'll go chasing gaps. So if you didn't answer something, and we think we need to know it before we can make a decision, we'll chase you for it. We'd rather not chase you, so tell us. If it's there, take the opportunity. Every single question is an opportunity for you. And there are quite a lot of those sub-questions and supplementary questions. So read it thoroughly and take care with them as well, because some of the juicier stuff is in there. As you said, international experience, that's a good one. We can learn a lot from that. And the way we ask it right now is to ask about the most significant international experience. Rather, we don't just want a list of everywhere you've been. We want to hear how working globally or just a life experience has impacted on you and why that's important.
Absolutely. Okay, so recommenders. One of the questions that pops up regularly with clients is who they should ask to be their recommenders. So what's your advice to them on that?
Yeah, so I'm always quite cautious with recommendations and references anyway, because they should be positive, right? If you're picking carefully and you're talking to the referees in advance, we expect them to be positive. So if there's not a huge amount of extra points for having positive references, it's our expectation. One thing I do notice, and this is from working for a global business school for many, many years, is the fact that there are different styles from certain countries or certain industries. We know that referees can be stricter, or they can say less and be quite short in their responses. And you're not going to know what their responses are, or you shouldn't do, because they're sending it straight to us. So, but we overlook that. We look at it and think in the context of who is this person they've asked, how much time do they have? I'd rather it was concise rather than reams and reams of information about you that then we have to read through. Because if it's there, we have to read it. But I would say choose carefully. Pick people who know you well. We'd really rather have somebody who's a line manager if possible. But if you're not telling your company that you're applying, then go for an ex-line manager or a colleague or a client. So tell us if you can't pick a line manager. You can tell us in that other information essay, just a quick sentence there saying that you're not telling your employer, etc., etc. Don't just go for a big name. Don't go for the CEO if they don't know who you are. We do get recommendations from presidents and prime ministers and CEOs. It is quite interesting, but we quickly get over that and look at the actual content. As interesting as it is for a few minutes in the office. I think, very importantly, give your recommender plenty of notice. If you have control of the application, you can do it as quickly as you like and as last minute as you like. Don't do that, but you can. But if you're asking a referee, give them plenty of time, and then they're probably more likely to say nice things about you. Spend some time talking to them about what this is for. Why are you applying to business school? Make sure they understand your motives, your journey. Make sure they remember what you've done in your job and some of the things they can talk about. There's nothing wrong with having a good conversation. We obviously don't want you to be writing it for them. And if a referee says, "Oh, you just write it," say no. Say thanks very much. Thanks for your offer, but I need I need somebody to be writing this for me. So then move on to somebody else, because we will know. We'll do a checks, and we have ways of knowing these things. So it needs to be genuine. So really, it's just all about respect for your referee, informing them properly, and then leaving it up to them to what they might tell us. But like I said, we're pretty open-minded. Sometimes we'll approach the referee and say, what did you mean by that? Or have you got this score reversed or something like that? So we are in contact with them. They can be really useful. But it's just one part of the application process.
Sure. And I think in terms of the conversation that, candidates might want to have with their recommenders, often it's a good idea to sort of sit down, as you say, to explain to them why they're interested in business school, but also perhaps to jog their memory in terms of some concrete examples that they can give to support the skills that you are wanting to portray about yourself. So if you were having a conversation with your recommender, about leadership or about team skills, gently remind them of a time when, so that they have that information, I guess, at their fingertips.
There you go. See, that's why people go to Fortuna for advice on these things. That's great advice, Emma. It's true. Think carefully, plan it. You have all these opportunities, so make sure each and every element is done as thoroughly as you can. I think the referees would appreciate the time that you take to talk them through all of that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Interviews. Okay, so something that strikes hard into the fear of many candidates. Obviously at LBS you have the alumni interview process. So tell us a little bit about why you use alumni and how that works.
Sure. So everybody has to go through an interview, a personal interview, before getting admission. The vast majority of these are with alumni, as you say. Sometimes admission staff will do it, generally just myself. But most of the time, like 99% plus, will be with alum. We're going to match you with someone locally, so they know your background, maybe your industry, and the local environment that you're working in. So already that gives them a lot more information than we would have if we were doing it. It also, I hope, makes that friendlier as well. The alum are not there as gatekeepers. We're the gatekeepers, if you like, in the admissions committee at the final end. They're there to find out about you. The interview is a conversation. It's asking you questions based on your application and your story and your aspirations and why you want to go to business school and why do you want to go to their business school. And there's the important bit to remember. This is their business school. They have a big stake. We will give them training and guidance as to what we're looking for. We have a consistent feedback form that they have to give scores and lots of comments on you. And we will go back to them if there are gaps and we need to know more. We're well aware that this is a personal process, so some alum might be slightly tougher than others or slightly different. So we're careful when we get the scores as to what we do with them. And it's one part of the process, but it's a really important part because it's the face-to-face part. The video, so we're coming on to the video element of it, that's been a really important innovation over the last few years because it does give us a consistent view. It means that we can see you, as well as the hundreds of alumni interviewers around the world who are meeting you. We've met some of you on the road as well, or less so this year, but we've met some of you online. But the video gives another opportunity for you to tell us a bit about yourself. When we first introduced it, we did quite a lot of work to think about bias and consistency and whether this was the right thing to do. So as a team, like we always do, we challenged each other as to how we would do this and how much weight we should give it, and can people get an offer on the program if they did a terrible job on the video. And it's like everything, it's the holistic view of everything that counts. And we've admitted people who had a bit of a tough time, perhaps stumbled a bit on the video. We're also well aware that if you're a non-native English speaker, it adds an extra layer of challenge. So we're conscious of that, but we've been really not so much surprised, delighted by the fact that most of these videos are really pretty strong. And I guess it's because we're only inviting people who get to the alumni interview stage to do a video for us, not all applicants. It's only people who get over that bar. And we're already quite tight with how we make that first cut. So we have fairly high expectations. Sometimes, what it does for us is provide us information on what you need to work on when you're in the program. So we might offer extra advice saying, this element wasn't so strong. but that's what the MBA is there for. It's to help to develop you as an individual in the way you present and project. Or you'll actually learn that yourself whilst doing it. Think, this isn't a strength. I need to work on this. No problem. It's another part of the application that perhaps is a voyage of discovery, because a good MBA application actually leads you to learn a lot about yourself you didn't know if you're doing it properly. So it is a time for reflection and self-analysis and your own kind of mini gap analysis of what you need an MBA for. If you're going to pay this much money for and give up 1 to 2 years of your life, you better be sure it's worth it, and you better be sure you're getting everything out of it you can. So preparing yourself for interviews, whether in person or the video interview, can teach you a lot about yourself. But again, we're pretty open-minded. Each and every part of the application tells us something, and perhaps then we'll go looking for evidence. Okay, so that wasn't so good. Have we got any other evidence in that area that we can look for? Or should we just ask the candidate the question?
Okay, yeah, and it's true what you say about self-reflection, isn't it? Because at Fortuna Admissions, we certainly see clients have quite a substantial journey. So, you know, when they first come to us, they might not know exactly what school they're looking for, or whether they're, you know, they want to apply to 1, 2, 3 or more schools. And, you know, they do generally, I think, progress quite substantially from where they join us right through the MBA journey. And that whole process of doing the essays and sort of narrowing down your career goals, making them concrete, filling out the application form, right through the whole process of, you know, video interview, it teaches you a lot about yourself. And I think, you know, hopefully by the time the class comes in, they have learned a lot about themselves, which they can then sort of put towards the program as they go through it. I guess just to put you on the spot a little bit, if somebody has done an interview with an alum and they really feel like they have bombed, that it didn't go well, and they come out thinking, oh my goodness, it's all over, what would you say to them?
Okay, I mean, there is the element that this is a competitive process, and you do only get one shot at many of these things. So if it was a fair interview and it's just kind of your fault you didn't perform as well, some of that will just rest on your shoulders and you take your chances. You could write and tell us you think it didn't go so well because, and we may factor that in. If something didn't go well or you didn't click or something like that, that can be discussed as well, but they're pretty rare occasions actually. So on the whole, we don't want to hear too much feedback or too much. We're not going to offer too many opportunities to re-interview. We just couldn't manage it. But I think also the alumni are more forgiving than candidates expect. When they're interviewing you, they recognise that you're in the before stage. So this is before you go to business school, before you come out the other end as this highly polished, amazing individual who's been through all these experiences and become the after. So I think they're quite forgiving about things like nerves, or if you're forgetting something, or if you deviate from a point, you know, they'll make notes on it. And again, it might be something that we inquire on further. But on the whole, there's a degree of flexibility in there. So first of all, don't worry about it too much. There's quite often nothing you can do. Second, wait to see what your result is, because you probably did better than you thought. You know, most people are pretty critical and they're not able to kind of think of the positives they took away. That's not such a bad thing. It means that you're somebody who evaluates your performance and thinks, how could I do better? We like that. That's a good kind of characteristic to have. But yeah, do be aware that we tend to be quite forgiving, quite open-minded about the performance at interview, because it's quite a nerve-wracking time. That's why we do our best to make it not so. So as I say, with alumni locally, people who've been through what you're going through, there's another really important factor. So maybe they'll open up by talking about you. And this is about you. Now, on the whole, they're not going to be offering you loads of difficult case questions to ask. They might chuck in a couple of things if they want to test you out. But on the whole, this is just a deep conversation about you, what you've done. And you don't need huge amounts of notes on that. One thing you do need to do, though, is to thoroughly read the application. You know, you wrote it, so you better be sure you know everything in there, because the alum will have that. And that's their base. That's what they're using to ask you the questions. So before you have that interview, reread it, make sure you remember everything you put.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say also that the alum aren't really, and also the admissions committee aren't looking to catch candidates out. You know, the best outcome for everybody is strong applications, you know, strong interviews, and a strong class as a result. So I think, you know, that's a message to put out to people also, that most of the time it should be an enjoyable, it should be a stretching experience. It should be something that challenges you, but it's not, you don't design it to catch people out. You design it to allow people, if they are well prepared and organised, to showcase the skills and what they have to bring to the class.
Absolutely, yeah. I echo that completely. It is very much a case of a good problem for us to have is to get all the feedback from alum and then to say, oh, we've got so many strong candidates. How are we going to select the ones who make the final cuts? You know, they did well at interview, especially, like I say, once we've calibrated and looked at responses from different regions, industries, individuals, and allowed for a little bit of variability in there. That's the tough bit. When we have so many good candidates, then we have to decide, and that is really hard. This is when perhaps it would be easier for us to have a much bigger program with more places, because of all the people who interview, most are certainly capable of doing a top MBA, and then it might be a case of fit with us versus fit with somebody else, or it might just be a capacity issue. You know, again, as I said, good problem to have, but really hard. You know, this year's been tough. Every year is tough. You know, as the quality goes up, people are better researched, probably because they're working. They know it's competitive, or they're working with organisations like yours to help them be the best they can be. But it makes our job tougher. But that's absolutely fine. We're okay with that. We'll just work longer hours and even harder. Decide who's right for us, and it is a holistic view. And when we build a class, that's what we're doing. We are admitting individuals, but we're doing that and we're building and shaping a class as we go. So we're looking for different people and different types as we go through.
Okay. All right, so moving on from the interview then, and I love this part of webinars like this because I know there's always something new and innovative going on at LBS. So tell me, what is the latest news, hot off the press, what's happening at LBS at the moment?
Well, this year, we'll talk about COVID in a minute, but I think one of the things I'm most proud about right now at the school is the work of the Wheeler Institute for Business and Development. So this is a research centre run by amazing faculty and some great executive staff as well. And it's a research centre that is looking at the world, and especially the developing world and emerging markets, and very much about people. So as well as their research, they're looking at the impact on communities. They do a lot of work in Africa, which is fascinating. And they're also helping to shape business education. So making sure that all of our students are agents of positive change. So when they go off to start working again post-MBA, whether it's with a large corporate or on their own as entrepreneurs, but it's giving them the right mindset to think about the world as a whole, and not just the narrow focus of the sector they're interested in. So the research centre and their practical opportunities, alongside things like the global business experiences, are ways to really have your eyes open to the world, irrespective of how much global experience or international experience you had in the past. It's nothing compared to what you'll get at the school. And it really does change your life and change how you think very much for the better. And that's our aim, so that we're not just producing better leaders, but helping people to develop themselves, really to become better people as well, through understanding of what's going on and how the world is changing and the impact on different economies and the impact of economies on people. Other things at the school, and this really is hot off the press, so it's about to be announced, but every year there are new electives. So as faculty expand their research or bring things right up to date. So I just received an email this afternoon, and I thought it was worth us talking about. So the new electives will be on things like the economics of a pandemic, emerging markets, tranquility in crisis. That's the title. Sounds fascinating. And then there's another one, world economy in the COVID-19 era. So that's updating our world economy elective to include what's going on now. That most of this is all about impact and how people are either benefiting or suffering, and the impact of economic events or events that are non-economic and the sort of lag and how long it takes and every element of it. I absolutely love that about the school, that as well as the core learning that you'll do, that in some ways doesn't change over time, you know, all the basic things we need you to have. Then there are tons of these courses and electives and experiences that come in that are bang up to date, and are using not just the faculty expertise, but the students coming from around the world and their experiences as well. So I think it's fantastic that we have things like the COVID-19 series of faculty of faculty lectures that are online. So have a look at the website as well for things like that, because there's some really thoughtful, interesting things being put up. And I think that's one thing that this whole time has really done. It's really sort of turned up the volume, or turned up the speed of delivery on faculty thinking, and it's been a real boost for kind of research and bringing those new thoughts and ideas. So there's a million things I could have chosen to talk about in terms of what's new at LBS or what's exciting, but I've decided to go for the things that are most current and most relevant to everybody in the world today.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that's fascinating, all those new electives that have come to fruition so quickly. And we will come back to COVID, because I know that's what a lot of people are interested in hearing about. But just to carry on from what you were saying about, you know, the pace of innovation at the school. I mean, one of the things that astounds me is the development of the early careers curriculum. And obviously this is for pre-experienced people who have, I think it's up to 2 years of experience. But, you know, in the last, however, 5-6 years, you've had obviously the Masters in Management degrees and the Global Masters in Management, but also the Masters in Analytics and Management and the Masters in Financial Analysis. So you have a whole raft now of pre-experienced programs, which, you know, people can explore as well. So just lots and lots of innovation all the time at LBS. And I think that's one of the things that makes it, you know, definitely stand out in the kind of grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important that we've kept up to date with our offering and make sure that each and every program we're offering is still very relevant to the group that it's designed for, or actually has it morphed so it's now relevant to a different group. And a few years ago, we made a really quite bold move to enter the pre-experienced market when it was still quite new. And we had a community of alumni and students who have been used to just having post-experience, because we're a standalone business school. So we don't have undergrads on campus. Everybody is there for postgraduate business experience or business study. And to that point, everybody was post-experienced and had at least 3 years, on average, a lot more than that. So that innovation was quite an interesting time at the school. But now it's second nature, and they've brought so much to the school. So that if you're on the Sloan Masters program, you have 15, 20 years work experience at a very senior level. And an elective, you could be sitting next to a Masters in Management student who's a fresh graduate. Now, you're going to be able to teach them lots about business and from your vast experience, but they're going to teach you a huge amount about what young consumers are thinking today, or potential employees of their business. So you're easily as valuable to them as they are to you, to learn from each other, which has been absolutely brilliant. Cross-generational learning is right at the heart of the school. And the elective portfolio being shared across many programs allows that to happen and positively encourages that to happen. That's probably something that's underestimated and we don't talk about enough. The idea that you're learning with people at very different stages of their career and what that can bring. And it's not one way. It's not most experienced to least experienced. It's very much two-way traffic, and I absolutely love that. It's brilliant for the school. It's been brilliant for my programs, the MBA and the Masters in Finance students, because not only does it mean they're learning with all these amazingly talented individuals, but also more and more recruiters are coming on campus because they have more reason to. They're hiring at different levels. So perhaps a recruiter who didn't need to hire at X level now comes because they're hiring the pre-experienced students and vice versa. So that works really well for us in continuing to be big enough to attract all recruiters, even in an economic downturn, because that's what happens. When things get tough, the number of schools that certain firms look at will shrink, and they'll only just look at a smaller selection. And we always make sure that we make that final cut. And that's important to us to maintain those relationships. Being in London really helps as well. But having this broad range of students from very different backgrounds helps as well to attract them.
Sure, and such a great opportunity for people to build out their network as well across, different, as you say, the cross-generational learning across groups of people that they might not normally interact with. So, an added bonus there. Yeah. Okay, so COVID. One of the biggest questions I've had from my clients currently, so whether they are people who are already sitting on offers from London Business School or whether they are in the pipeline for round 4, so they're currently in the process of interviewing, and also for people, I guess, who are looking at applying in August for the first round for next year. Where does LBS stand with COVID and the start of term for, at least for the MBA program?
Sure. So this is huge. It's been a huge year. It's been the most challenging year of my career so far, primarily because so much has been in the past out of our control. We don't know what's happening next. So we've had to respond to things. We've had to be ahead of the curve. We've had to be making policy and setting the direction of how things will work in the future when we don't know what it looks like. We've always spoken a lot about training our students to be agile and to think on their feet and to consider elements and to consider the unexpected, etc. And we've had to very much exhibit those characteristics and qualities ourselves as we make decisions on what we'll do next. Being a global business school makes it even more complicated, exponentially more complicated, because we don't just have to consider what's happening in the UK, but every country we're attracting students from. What we've decided to do in the end, and this was released to our admits last week, is to start the program as we expected on the 17th of August, but to start that in a virtual context. We have done really well to very quickly take our online learning to the next level. And something that was going to take months, if not years, to develop has been done in weeks. We've thrown resource at it to make sure it's great, to the point now where 78% of our current students have said that virtual learning and online provision has been excellent or good. So we're really pleased with the reaction our students took, and just generally to the maturity of the need to be flexible. But for the new classes coming in, so as I say, the start is the 17th of August. That will be from your home, and we will be running elements of the program that translate well to doing it online. So we are looking at the content and the ordering and seeing what's best to go where. But it won't be long until you're allowed on campus. So campus will open up from, we think, about the 7th of September. And then the face-to-face learning will commence on the 21st of September. So it's only really a short period that there'll be online learning. And this is a 1.5-year, 2-year program, actually. And everybody will be in it together. So everybody will be having that same first month of learning from distance. And the students have a lot of advice to give about how to make that work, and how to do the things you perhaps don't expect you can do, making new friends, networking, starting to think about your career. That's one reason why we actually decided to start as usual, is the career search. Our employers, they have a plan for their recruitment cycle as well. And a lot of what we do evolves around that, as well as your learning from professors and learning about yourself. It very quickly ties into looking for an internship, looking for a job. So we've had to link that and talk to our employers and see what they want. So we've listened to the admits about what they want. We've listened to employers. We've looked at our own schedule, how it works, and this is the way we're going. We're confident in the virtual offering we have. The hybrids process, the hybrid system that we're going to offer extends beyond that 21st of September if necessary. So if you are from somewhere that's taking a little longer to get away from, because of your local rules or visas are taking longer, we have that little bit more flexibility as well, which is brilliant. So there are plenty of people who want to get to LBS and start learning as soon as possible. So they'll be the ones who are on the doorstep, going in on the 7th of September when we're ready to open again. And there are others who are perhaps a little bit more nervous about what it means, or they've got situations at home where they need a little bit more time. And so we're going to be able to take account of that and give some flexibility, which is quite new, quite different. And there's still lots we're still going to make final decisions on. And this is where I'm in absolute awe of the parts of the school that run the programs and make these things happen. There are teams of people who probably are students you'll never meet, but they are absolute geniuses and making sure that all the different bits of the jigsaw fit together. I guess one point we're quite fortunate on is not only the opening of the SAMI Offer Centre a few years ago, doubling our space, but the coming online of another new building that we purchased last year and we're developing as well. So we do have more space, which I think will help with things like the social distancing and the seating and continuing that hybrid method of learning. So obviously we're not going to be grouping hundreds of students into one lecture theatre, all sat inches away from each other to start with. We'll be looking at what the policy is and best practice and building in flexibility so that students are either having face-to-face or virtual, or mixing it up. But the thing is, everybody's doing that together, and there are tons of opportunities to get to know each other. And we've really helped through the experiences of the current students to dispel a few of the myths about online learning, and it's been really eye-opening for us. But like I said, that's only for a short period of time, and it will help us to integrate probably what will be online forevermore. It's fast-tracked our thinking on, is this the best way to teach this? Does this need to be done in person? Or actually, should this be something our students are looking at before they even start the core of the programme? And I think that's the way of the future for all programmes. I think and expect any good MBA will be learning something from this, so that next year it doesn't all go back to how they were 2 years ago. We've incorporated things that have been forced on us. It's that thing about necessity being the mother of invention. That's very much come true, but it's helped us to think, okay, this is the right move. This actually is better if we do it this way. And the proof is in the pudding. You'll have to see this when you get here for yourselves as students, but we're really confident that it's going to work really well, and already is working quite well for the students as they are here. And more as the world gets control of this thing, it means that the sort of normality returns in different elements as well. So if you're a new entrant to the programme, there's plenty of time before you're covering all of the experiential stuff. And if you're someone that's applying for next year, even more so. But we're really confident that those who are starting this August don't need to wait a year and try and defer to the next year, because what we're offering is fantastic, and it's not going to be detrimental, the changes that we have to make. And also, now is the time to be reinventing yourself and taking a break, so that when you hit the market afterwards, you're hitting the market as it will be in a year or 2 years' time, when it's come back up a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure there are a lot of people that will be pleased to hear about that flexibility. And having spent a bit of time last year in the news, well, it's not that new now, a couple of years old, the SAMI Offer Centre, it's such a fantastic facility, and the space that's there will certainly make all of this a lot easier than it would have been sort of 5-10 years ago, definitely.
You're right, Emma, from your time here, that there's the building next door as well, what used to be the medical college. So that's ours now as well. So that gives us extra resources to use, not necessarily just for the MBA, but for different programs and shift students around. It just increases capacity so that we have something we didn't have in your time, which was as much space for the students that are there. And it's completely revolutionised life at the school. We're very lucky to have that in a central London location.
Absolutely, although I do still have a soft spot for the Nash Terraces, which are still so beautiful. All right, so I think it's probably time we move on to some Q&A. I know we have quite a few questions here. So I'll start off with one that came in through email to me during the week. And that is, what percentage of MBA graduates have you seen sign jobs based in the US? Which is an interesting question, because obviously people come into LBS from all over the world, and people often want to know where they go afterwards.
Sure. So I'm going to leave candidates to look for the specific answer for that in the employment reports that are downloadable from the website, because it does change every year. It changes with demand and partly by supply. With this question, though, what I'd say is, it's like everything. If you're looking at applying to a business school, choose the school that suits your short and long-term aims and needs the best. If you're looking for a career in the US, and you're from the US, then LBS is a great idea, because it's going to give you an edge, a differentiator, when you go back home to your local market. They know who London Business School is, but you'll have had a different set of experiences and still carry the same strength of brand. If you're a national from another region, though, and you're looking to go from wherever it might be in the world, to LBS and then to the US, I would say, look pretty carefully. That's a big decision to make. Of course, it's possible, but you'll have to explore the visa routes. Recruiters in LBS are doing it from London, but doing it globally. So there are students who are going to work in the US and other countries. But if you are absolutely focused on spending the whole of your career in the US, probably should be looking at US schools for your education, or being brave to know that that would give you an edge in some ways, but LBS global education will give you an edge in other ways. So just really think it through and think, as I said, long and short term. It's not all about your first job after business school. It's about where you want to be in 20 years' time. So of course it's important as to, I need a school that can help me find a job in this country. It's as well, I need an MBA in a school that will set me up for whatever the future might bring. I don't even know what that is yet, because as we say, lots of the jobs or sectors that you're going to end up going to haven't even been invented yet. So you don't know what the future will bring. So you need to be spending time with a school that can prepare you for ambiguity, prepare you for a very international career, a career of change, the fact that you'll be switching careers over a number of years. So this goes to Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott's research and book on the 100-year life, and the fact that nobody, me excluded, spends their whole career in one organisation or industry.
Okay, great. And yeah, so we have a bunch of questions here, David, about master's grades and whether or not, and I guess this reverts back a little bit to the question about GPA earlier on, if you have a lowish first degree undergraduate performance, whether you will take master's grades into consideration as part of the application process.
Yeah, we take everything into consideration. So if your undergrad is lower and you did it when you're 18 years old and you had a different set of trials and tribulations, then a more recent master's performance that's stronger is useful to us, and we're probably more likely to look at that very closely because it's the most relevant, because it's the most recent. Again, looking at professional qualifications. So if you have CFA level 3, we know what that takes. We know how tough that is, or even any layer of CFA or other professional qualifications, especially if you did them whilst working. So that stuff's of huge value to us as it is to you. So we are looking at it, we are giving points to that. So again, back to this open-minded, holistic view, there are ways to compensate for performances that are below the average, if need be. But again, competitive process, so it's another factor that you'll need to overcompensate somewhere else.
Sure. Okay, thank you. There's a question here which I'm interested in, which is about scholarships. Somebody is asking, what are the grounds for getting a scholarship and what should they pay attention to? That's one of the areas I used to look after at the school and something I really love doing. So tell us a little bit about scholarships, what you're looking for, how competitive they are.
Sure. So this is another part of your research with business schools that you need to do carefully and school by school. Some schools have a lot of money, a lot of history, and financial aid provision is very generous. Others don't have quite so much, but perhaps they've got the rest of their offering exactly what you need. So the first thing I'd say is, as much as you can, think long term. The size of the debt that you're taking on, of course it counts, but this is stuff that isn't a problem in a short number of years' time. So as long as you can fund it and get through it, that stuff's not relevant in 5 years or 10 years. It's choosing the best business school that's most suitable for you. Having said that, scholarships are great. That's why we're trying to develop them. That's why our next fundraising campaigns have scholarships very much at the heart. I love working on the scholarships portfolio because it moves so quickly, right from the new Laidlaw scholarships for women, just fantastic. They're going to provide opportunities for people who probably wouldn't have looked at business school or couldn't have made it to business school without them existing, through to other scholarships, like one of my particular favourites, something called the Tech Disrupt Scholarship, where you're pitching an idea, a business, potentially to venture capitalists in the form of the scholarships committee and the eventual donor, so that we want you to give us a real idea of something you might well want to develop during business school afterwards. And the scholarship is awarded on the creativity and the disruptive ability of your idea. I think that's fantastic.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'd like to do more with that kind of thing. There are other scholarships that are nationality based. We have them that we developed who are industry based. So we want more people from X backgrounds. So let's offer more scholarships. So military, healthcare, luxury, they're the things we've introduced in recent years. One thing, I think one area that is growing slowly, but getting there and will grow more quickly soon, are the needs-based scholarships that we'll be introducing. Yeah. The whole of our portfolio in the past was merit-based, as you'll remember, and that still is growing. And I love that because it helps me make sure we can attract the most interesting and best individuals, but there's a real place for need as well. So there'll be schools that can offer more and some that can offer less. It is a factor in who you choose, but sometimes don't let it dominate, you know, because when students approach me or candidates approach me and say, okay, what financial aid package can you offer me, then how do I react to that? Well, I'll say kind of, it doesn't quite work like that. You need to step back. Funding is your responsibility. We can help some people with scholarships. We work on loan partnerships with organisations to make sure money is available for candidates to apply for. But just as admission and getting a job and passing your exams, so is finding the funding for your programme. So start the research now. Start it even before you've chosen a school. You know, look at who can you borrow money from, what organisations, family members, are there external scholarships? You know, really dig deep as to what's out there. Try not to make it a limiting factor as much as you can. Don't expect a scholarship from your school choices though, because if you go in with the expectation, you might be disappointed. But do your best. If there are applications for scholarships, as there sometimes are, do them as well as you possibly can. Many cases though, those scholarships don't require applications. They're just merit awards that are based on the things you've already told us. And so then you just have to sit back and wait. What we try and do is award scholarships before you have to put down a deposit. So for those who are going to be granted them, we'll tell you before deposit time. For everybody, we'll also say, unfortunately, you didn't get one at this time. There might be some later, but don't rely on it. So we try and be honest that way as much as we can. Saying that, there are people who come back round and get one later on as scholarships either free up or new ones come on board. So it's a never say never thing. But if you don't get one in that first batch, you probably need to think about how else I will fund it. Yeah. But go in there not expecting, because you'll probably be disappointed if you just expect it to be fully funded by the school or even part funded. That only happens to a select group of students.
Yeah, and if you get one, then it's a nice surprise, a nice bonus.
Yeah, I think that's the way to think about it rather than reliance, is to think of this as a wonderful enabler that means that I can choose a different direction for internships, or perhaps don't have to think about company sponsorship. But company sponsorship is a wonderful thing, so make the most of it.
Okay, thank you. So a couple of questions here around GRE and GMAT. So see if we can blend them together because I'm just conscious of time. So somebody is asking about the GMAT policy for round 4 applicants because of the testing centre closures, which are obviously affecting people. And they've asked, what if the applicant cannot obtain the GMAT by the end of June? Now, to my understanding, most people will be able to take the GMAT online before the end of June and submit a score that way.
Yep, the vast majority of people can take GMAT or GRE online. If you're from a country where it's not being made available, then we can discuss that. But we're talking tiny numbers of people who either didn't apply early or didn't take the test before applying. And here's the thing. This is where usually we're pretty generous and pretty forgiving and open-minded with how we do admissions. And we are with round 4 and late applicants, in that you can apply without a score, but you'll need a score before we offer admission. So if you don't have one, we are going to kind of question why you didn't do it earlier. You know, is it a rush application? Are you quite late approaching it? Why? But some great people are admitted late. But you don't get a choice of whether I don't want to take it because it's online, I don't like that format. You know, if you want to join the school this year and the test is available to you, you need to take it and you need to do well. As I said on another webinar in the past, we've probably been a bit more forgiving and a little bit more open about test scores this year because it is kind of crazy out there and it has really hit people's plans and forced you into a position of taking a test in a different format. So here's me saying, you know, we are going to be strict on you, but we are kind of open to the fact that this has put extra levels of stress on people. And we work closely. I had a meeting with senior staff of the London office of GMAC just the other week as well, to talk about how they're developing, because they're an amazing organisation that develop tests and different things. And we talked about, you know, the impact of online and what it means, and they're so good at calibrating the scores well, so that we can trust the scores coming out of it. But we're also aware of the stresses people are under to make that, to get a score that's in range. That's what we've really been thinking about this year, is it in range? Are there other metrics we can look at? So I wouldn't be surprised if our average goes down a couple of points or a few points. I don't mind, really. You know, it would be great to keep going up every year. But if we wanted to artificially increase it, we would do that by taking people from certain sectors and parts of the world. We don't. We want diversity. So we take great individuals. Sometimes they have great scores, sometimes they don't. As long as they're great in other ways, we'll take the hit on the score, especially this year. I think most schools are saying that. And actually, you know what, in some ways that creates a more natural environment where schools are just looking at talent and are slightly more open-minded without worrying about whether it threatens their GMAT average that's published in a certain ranking. We have to keep an eye on that stuff, and it's important. And we do want to show that the scores are representative of high quality admits, but there are other ways of doing that. Our employment rate and the percentage of the employment rate that we're, you know, the class that are contributing towards that, and that's something we focus hard on, is really important as well. So the fact that, you know, 98% of the class are reporting whether they have a job or not, and then that gives an employment rate of X, is important to us. Those kind of measures, as well as just how well-rounded and talented people are, GPA averages, whatever they might be. Those things are quite hard for us, because people come in with academics from around the world where GPA doesn't exist. So GMAT helps us, but we're not obsessed.
Okay. All right, lovely. Can we squeeze one more question in? I think we should. One more. Okay, I've got rafts here. And I think to everybody who hasn't had their question answered by the end of the session, I think we agreed with David before, I'm going to put him on the spot again, that we'll draw up a list of questions and get some responses from you, and see if we can get them out to people who have attended.
You do that.
Thank you very much, sir. That would be very kind of you. So just the final question, and I quite like this because it just speaks to this idea of, you know, the holistic sort of package that you look for, and also the different backgrounds that come to LBS, and that is, what application advice would you give to those who did not pursue a traditional career path? So, for example, an entrepreneur who started their own business straight out of college. So an interesting one to close out on.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned before how every year, or most years, we've got somebody who's done something very special, who chose not to go to university for whatever reason. We don't look for someone to add to the class each year, but if someone comes along and they're great, that's fine. You just need to help us understand your decision making, your levels of success, what extra you can bring, and then fill the gap for us. So if you don't have an undergraduate GPA or equivalent, have a good test score, maybe professional qualifications, or show us that you do lots of quantitative work, whatever it takes. Just fill the gaps that we don't know about you with evidence. And if it is in entrepreneurship and you've developed and then sold the business, that's amazing. You're going to be ahead of many applicants for that reason alone. And so perhaps more likely for admission. It all depends on the whole kind of package thing. But yeah, I just think candidates like that add so much. And it doesn't always necessarily define where you'll end up afterwards either. I can remember a candidate from a long time ago who didn't have an undergrad, who was running his own business, which was very much on the leisure side. So whatever he was doing, I won't go into specifics, but so it wasn't a very corporate environment. He developed his own business. It was on the leisure side. He ended up with a pretty corporate career, working for a consulting company, doing really well, getting to a partner level, because that's what he wanted to do.
I remember who
you probably
that
know
is.
I'm talking about, yeah. So they're great examples. The other side of that is somebody who continues their entrepreneurial journey and makes us proud, or hits the news, whatever it might be. So again, the interesting candidates come from very different backgrounds and have very different stories. That's what keeps me working in this school, in this environment for over 20 years, because it's fascinating. The stories of the candidates applying are amazing. You know, I sometimes sit there jealously thinking the lives some people have led and what they've done already pre-MBA. And then, but I guess in my career and your career, you get over that quickly of the kind of self-doubt of these amazing people and what they've done. Because we're looking at some of the most talented people in the world.
Mm. It's the same here, you know, some of the clients that we get coming through who have these phenomenal stories, and, you know, at Fortuna Admissions, we work with them to make sure that those stories are the best they can be, you know, when people present themselves to you and to the other business schools. So it definitely does keep you on your toes and make life interesting.
That's one point I wanted to comment on, actually, Emma, before we cut, if we can, is just the fact that, you know, people, I think I've been asked it before, where people, how do we think about candidates working with organisations like yours? Do we mind? Is that something we don't like? For me, I've considered this loads over years, and the most important thing I want is for candidates to show themselves at their best version of themselves. Now, if you weren't working with professionals like you, you'd be talking to friends and you'd be selecting critical friends who could point out to you the kind of things that you need in preparation for your application. So that's why I'm here talking to you now, because we're very comfortable with the idea of you having organisations, friends, whoever it is, to help you put across the best story and the best version of you as honestly as possible. So it is help, but it's only helping you, you know, and that's why we're talking to you, and there are other organisations out there who we trust, who have a really good moral stance on how much help should be given. So I just wanted to explain that, because I know that might come up, and candidates often ask me that question. Yeah. And it's important, I think, that we take that quite mature view, that we know help goes on for all candidates, and we can look and see where people have had help in different places. But as long as it's helping you to be the best you can be and not stepping over line, we're perfectly comfortable.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so let's just go back to the slideshow if we can here.
What have we not covered? I've been talking endlessly. I hope I haven't talked too much for you.
Not at all. I'm just trying to, here we are, that's the one I wanted. So in a normal environment, we would be strongly encouraging everybody to rush off to campus, and, you know, if they're available, if they're local or can get to London, and to attend a drop-in session on a Friday or a Monday, or to attend an information session in their nearest sort of big city. With the current situation, I'm pleased to say that LBS still has a bunch of stuff online. So I think I'm right, David, in saying that there's a session online on Friday for the MBA in the afternoon, which is probably replacing a drop-in session. But anyway, anybody who's interested in those or for signing up for LBS webinars can look at the events page, which is on the screen now. And if you're interested in discussing your MBA plans with us here at Fortuna Admissions, feel free to ping an email across to me, or sign up for one of our free 30-minute consultations. And we always like, you know, talking through your story and helping people make the decision about what's right for them in terms of the next step in their MBA journey. And I guess that's pretty much it. David, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been great to catch up. I love always hearing what's going on at LBS, as you know. And yeah, best of luck for the incoming class, and for obviously moving on into round one again quite quickly for the next year. It seems to come around very quickly.
You're very welcome. Can I have a holiday first, though? Because this has been a long year. So I'll worry about that in August, September, when we've got the class in. We're very excited about who's coming in, and we'll be equally excited about starting again next year, as long as I get a few days off in between. But no, it's been brilliant. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you and talk to your clients, potential clients out there. We love talking about London Business School and everything we have to offer. So do, as Emma says, go online, see what's on offer. We've been developing more and more events online, and that's going to be a change as well. That's what we'll have more of going next year, even when the world comes back to normal, because we've recognised it gives us something we didn't have before, which is more and more access to people who can't make it to an event or perhaps can't visit. So visit if you can, but if you can't, we'll come to you.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are, and hopefully we will speak to you soon. Bye.